What's up, everybody? Happy Thursday and welcome to Fantasy Football Today, DFS. As always, I'm joined by Meg Shoup and Mike McClure. And Mike and Meg, we've got a really busy slate. We've got 12 games. The bye weeks are a thing of the past. We've got our Fantasy Football DFS contest. The link is in the chat, so check that out. It'll be in the podcast description as well. But ladies and gentlemen, I want to get right to it. We're going to go through each and every game, some of our favorite plays, and then we're going to get into Meg and I's cheat sheet and Mike McClure's top three at each position. Real quick, before we start with Bengals Titans, Mike, how you doing today?
I am great, Sia. Fired up, ready for week 15 already. It seems like it's flying by. Maybe it's because they're so valuable, the weeks, but yeah, week 15, here we are.
All right, Meg, how you doing today?
I know it makes me sad that it's already week 15. Slow down, but happy best ball playoffs to those that are in the best ball playoffs. Super excited about that. And so I'm warning you, I might have some best ball biases. I can't help myself. I have to double down, so.
Mike, you got really happy when she said that. You're in some best ball playoffs as well?
Yeah, nice. Best ball playoffs. I kind of tuned it out a little bit, throughout the season because it's such a long season, right? Okay. I drafted Jamar Chase #1 overall over McCaffrey every single time. So I had Chase and everything, right?
Wow.
His big game though. So I have 100 entries in the big tournament, right? I was advancing 21 of them heading into that game. The game finalizes. I advanced 33 entries to the next round of the playoffs, all because of Jamar Chase in that massive 15 catch, 170 yard, 2 touchdown game just trickled over. Almost all of them that advanced, I just moved from third to second to advance. The only thing I'm sweating right now, though, is I drafted Bucky Irving way early in almost every one of them. He's not going to play this week, probably. So that is unfortunate. That is sad because he is a large reason why I'm not only advancing 10 to 15.
Yeah, that you brought up Bucky Irving. It does make me feel a little bit better about my last week because obviously I tied a lot to Aiden O'Connell last week, and it obviously didn't end up working out. That was kind of a weird game with the Bucs. But one thing I did say last week was I'm fading Bucky Irving because I just don't trust the hip issue, the back issue, and it turns out that was a good thing not to trust. Bucky Irving was my fade on my cheat sheet last week, but again, I didn't have the best week, mostly because I tied a lot of lineups to Aiden O'Connell due to his price. Did the same thing with Bryce Young the week before, and that actually worked out for me. So you win some, you lose some. Well, Bengals won one last week against the Dallas Cowboys. They're a 5-point favorite against the Titans. It's a 46.5-point total. I will note that I do think there's potential weather issues to watch in this one just because we might have some rain, a little bit of wind, but that's something you just have to monitor Sunday morning and change your lineups accordingly. Mike, I'm going to start with you because you just talked about Jamar Chase. It's really hard to just look off of Jamar Chase, but this is such a packed such a packed slate with so many games and so many other games that are maybe better than this one. Do you look away from the Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase connection?
I'm not going to look away from it completely. I still like Jamar Chase. I mean, it's hard not to, as you see with the graphic here, just the volume is absolutely insane. While they are still, trying to potentially make the playoffs, it's kind of a little bit of a lost season. So I think a secondary goal for them is to get him the triple crown in terms of receptions, yardage, and touchdowns. Some of that is he's just the best player on the field, so it makes sense to throw it to him. But when you look at this target share, it's a very clear emphasis that they want to continue to reward him that way. So I think that he's a great play. I like T. Higgins to bounce back and have a little better game than he did in the last one as well. And then Chase Brown's volume is incredible too. So I do like the Cincy side still quite a bit.
All right, Megan, if we're talking Cincy side, I mean, it's funny because anytime I look at the Titans, I think of you. I think of Will Levis, Calvin Ridley. Are we because Will Levis is 5K. If you want to do the thing I did last week with Aiden O'Connell or the week before with Bryce Young, you could do it with Will Levis against a Cincinnati Bengals team that isn't very good. I don't think you're doing that. I just wanted to bring it up. Are you, and are you playing anybody on either side here?
Well, I mean, again, I think because the Bengals defense is bad and you can attack him, you could do it. I mean, he had a terrible game last week, but the 3 or 4 prior, he was, serviceable. So, if he kind of bounces back, I definitely like Ridley. I'll say that. I think you can do Levis Ridley stacks. Obviously, Chase and Burrow are in play. I think I probably am going to go to other stacks or more interested in other stacks, but I think all those, key pieces are in play in this game.
Yeah, Mike, is there anybody on that Tennessee side that you'd consider playing if you were to stack, or even if you were to play Jamar Chase? Would there be somebody you'd correlate him with on the way back, or you just move on to another game?
Yeah, it'd be Calvin Ridley. We've seen this defense struggle. If Levis throws an interception, that's probably a good thing. It just means more passing volume coming. So, yeah, I Ridley is definitely in play for me.
All right. Josh Lucero in here, dropping some knowledge, dropping some picks. James A. Moshe Stern says, good morning, everyone. So does Jason Reyes, Kirk Schroyer, Alan Priesig, Jay Pitts. I mentioned Kirk Schroyer already, and Scott, the Wisconsin Florida Project guy. If you're watching us on Twitter, go ahead and switch over to the Fantasy Football Today YouTube channel if you want, because you can jump in the chat with everybody else, can ask us questions or make comments. Maybe you like some props or DFS plays. But I think it's fair to move on. I can't not mention Chase Brown. So we do have to address that. He's 7,200. Meg, did you already address Chase Brown? Are you playing
No,
him?
but I should have. There are so many. I'll just start, since this is the first game, by saying there are so many running back plays I like. So many. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be hard to narrow that pool, but he has to be in there with his volume. So my mistake for not mentioning him, because Chase Brown is definitely in play.
Not at all. And I think we should mention Tony Pollard too. Mike, are you in or out on Tony Pollard, Chase Brown?
More interested in Brown than Pollard. Pollard's coming in with the Q tag. I think he's fine, and I think he will get some volume and run all over. The issue, at least as it currently stands, is we're going to have some interest in Chuba Hubbard. We're going to have some interest in Rachaad White, who are a little better price points. Potentially James Conner. I think the Cardinals could run the football a ton in that matchup against the Patriots. So, look, I don't mind Pollard. I honestly, to tell you the scenario where I would play Pollard is probably with Will Levis and Calvin Ridley, and just bet on the Titans scoring 30 points on this awful defense and run it back with Jamar Chase for volume. That is probably the scenario where I would play Pollard.
That's very interesting. And don't forget, because we have this sort of like the elephant in the room is the 425 game with the Bills Lions, and we're going to get to that game. But don't forget, this is such a huge slate. What is it? 8 games in the 1 o'clock, or maybe it's 7.
7 and 5.
7 and 5. Mm-hmm. So you can play the 1 o'clock slate and just avoid the headache, because some people might think it's a headache of like, which of these Lions and Bills do I put in there? You're basically almost dealing with a main slate just with the 1 o'clock games because of how many games you have to choose from. So what Mike just said, maybe that's something you do in the early only slate, and you play differently on the main slate, or you just play the afternoon slate as well. So those are things to consider. Don't forget, you don't just have to play the main slate. All right, let's go to the next game. Washington Commanders against the Saints. Meg, I'm starting with you here. It looks like Jake Haener starting for the Saints. I'm out on Kamara at 7,700. Mike just brought up a lot of running backs that we like. And he didn't even mention like Rico Dowdle. Like, there's a lot of value on this board that we can talk about as we go through this show. Maybe Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery. Those are also running backs people will want to play on the main slate. So I'm out on everybody on that side other than maybe Juwan Johnson. And I'm out on everybody on the Washington side except for, and this is another running back, Brian Robinson. What's your take on this game?
Very similar. Juwan Johnson, I like a good cheap tight end. And so he's a punt tight end that you could play. I believe he got there last week at his price. So Juwan Johnson is the only play on the Saints side. On the other side, I mean, with Noah Brown now out, you could go to those like dirt cheap Washington receivers. I don't think I will. I think the volume could be soaked up there more just by McClure and Ertz. So I don't know that I'll go to those dirt cheap Washington receivers. I think it more flows through McLaurin and Ertz. Jaden Daniels, you certainly could play. He certainly could get there, but I'm more likely to just play the Brian Robinson Jr. side. Just like you said, I love the spot's great. Obviously the game script is likely the perfect setup for him in with a big favorite. So Brian Robinson is my favorite play on the Washington side.
Yeah, Mike, are you in on Brian Robinson? Because there are so many running backs you can play, and every lineup is going to have 2, maybe 3 if you decide to play a running back in the flex spot. I do want to point out before you answer that question, if this game had a back and forth component to it, I think taking a shot on a 3,100 Luke McCaffrey or a 3,100 De'Ami Brown, Meg, to your point, would make a lot of sense. I think it's just too big of a risk because we don't know Zacchaeus, Crowder, we don't really know who's going to get in there, and we just don't have that back and forth component. I haven't looked at Jaden Daniels' pass attempts, but I assume it's relatively low versus the market. Mike, your thoughts on Brian Robinson, or you're playing anybody in this game?
Robinson's fine. I don't have a ton of interest in getting there just yet. There's just, as Meg said, there's so many running backs here, and we're going to need a little bit more clarity on that situation. But a guy we haven't even mentioned too, I think Braylon Allen in a bounce back spot. He was a little underwhelming. I think this is a good matchup for him. So I'm going to be out on this game entirely, actually. And the only comment I will make is, how do the Commanders not cover as your first leg of a teaser this week? How do they not cover the 1.5? I think it's a strong teaser leg if you can find a dance partner on the rest of the slate.
Yeah, the few snaps I've seen from Jake Haener, he actually looks like a competent quarterback, but you cannot throw Jake Haener in there with MVS, Kevin Austin, Cedric Wilson, like Bub Means, Dante. You just can't do that, especially with the defense that's already bad. Washington should walk in any sort of teaser leg or money line parlay leg that you want to do. All right, let's go to the Jets and the Jaguars. You just mentioned Braylon Allen. What's interesting about him, Mike, is that Isaiah Davis got some run as well. Yeah. Braylon Allen, 5,400, Isaiah Davis, 5K. You know, I wish this total was higher. I wish maybe Mac Jones wasn't playing here, because I think Garrett Wilson, Devontae Adams, Aaron Rodgers, I think Aaron Rodgers could chuck it around here. I actually like their team total over. That's a bet I might make. This is not a DFS comment. It's just a general comment. Mike, are you interested in anything on the Jet side? You mentioned Braylon Allen, and would there be any run back like a Brian Thomas at 5,800 or an Evan Ingram at 4,600?
Crazy enough, I actually kind of like some pieces in this game, and I like the over 40.5. 41 is a very key number in the NFL. You know, don't tell anybody, but since week 9, the Jets are the worst defense in the NFL in terms of EPA per play, and the Jaguars are 29th. We're talking about the two worst defenses, motivation out the window. I think we could see some offense here and just sneak to an ugly over. I like Braylon Allen. I think Tank Bigsby's in play. I think Devontae Adams is clearly in play still, and Thomas as well. So I'm not going to stack it from a quarterback standpoint, but if you want to play some Braylon Allen, I'm in. You want to play some Tank Bigsby, I'm in. And I'm certainly in on a little Devontae Adams at times.
Meg, again, this is an ugly game. It's only a 40.5 point total. Jets a small favorite here, but I just have this feeling that Aaron Rodgers is just going to like YOLO this thing and really feed his friends and, you know, tell everybody, basically make the statement through throwing the ball that like, you know, I'll be good next year too, you know, that kind of thing, or not next year too, but like, I might be sticking around for a year and let me prove myself real quick. Such an easy defense to expose. With all that said, it's tough to get to a lot of players into this game, especially when Garrett Wilson is 6,500 and Devontae Adams is 6,900. Reasonable prices, but when you're looking at 40.5 point total, it's not great. Do you like anything in this game?
Yeah, I mean, you guys made the point. It could be an ugly over. It's two bad defenses. So while it feels gross, I actually do have some interest. I think because the target share is so condensed to Garrett Wilson and Devontae Adams, and the motivations that Rodgers potentially has. He finally got over 300 yards last week. I do think you can do a Rodgers double stack. I absolutely do. Run it back with Brian Thomas Jr. You know, Brian Thomas Jr. did explode last week in the second half. So I do like that. And I don't mind. I mean, it's hard because it seems like Braylon Allen and Isaiah Davis are splitting the work there per last week. But so you kind of have to project what you think will happen there. But they're two cheap running backs that got involved in the passing game.
You know, I wish they were cheaper though. That's the thing. If I feel like Isaiah Davis should be like 4,600. I know he had some touches. He had a great game, but like to have both of those guys 5K or above just feels like I think I personally have to be off of both of them, especially in a game like this, or I should say a total like this. But I think that's enough time on that. Listen, we like the Jets side. Mike likes the over. There's probably some pieces here. Brian Thomas could have a nice game. Tank Bigsby is an interesting mention, maybe in a bigger contest where you're playing somebody off the board a little bit. All right, let's go to the Kansas City Chiefs. Mike, this is your team at the Cleveland Browns. I felt really smart, Mike, because you and I were on the network show on Monday and on CBS Sports Network on Monday. And I said, hey, this is wild. This is a 6.5 point spread that the Chiefs are laying here. This spread should be 4. And then literally the next day, the spread adjusted to 4. So chalk one up for me. I say some silly things sometimes, but certainly that one came true. Total here, 44. Mike, do you like anything in this game?
You know, I think it's interesting. When we go back to, you remember what I just said about the Jets being the worst defense? Since week 9, Kansas City rates 31st, just in front of the Jets. They rate 31st. And this was a team that we talked about how awesome their defense was, as it was a top 5 defense for the majority of the season. Since week 9, though, they have fallen off of a cliff. It's the Jameis Winston experience. Like, if you want to stack Jameis, absolutely go for it. Jerry Jeudy has been fantastic. David Njoku should have a little success here. Having said all of that, I think that it's an okay time to back Kansas City's defense as well. I could see enough turnover variance. As far as other plays in the game, it's not popping as much as I thought it might. And where it is popping for me is just on that Cleveland side. A little bit of Njoku, who is questionable, and a little bit of Jerry Jeudy. Not really getting to anything on the Kansas City side. The only thing I will say is this is a spot where I think Patrick Mahomes could be threatening to have his biggest game of the year. The reason for that is we know this Chiefs team, like, are they going to lose a game here? Possibly. But when they lose, they're never getting blown out, right? They're always going to be in that one score kind of game. And if the Browns have any level of success, I think that Mahomes is at least going to be able to keep the offense competitive with them. So I think that while I don't love the stackability, I think playing Mahomes is an interesting look here.
Absolutely. Very interesting. One thing, Meg, before you give your take on this game, we do have to monitor the weather this time of year in general, but the weather in Cleveland, maybe some wind, maybe some precipitation. We also have to monitor, I think Cedric Tillman's playing. David Njoku does have that hamstring injury. These are things we have to monitor. Meg, anything you like in this game? Again, a 44-point total, certainly not one of the sexiest games here, but Jameis Winston, 5,500, Jerry Jeudy, 6,200. If Tillman plays, 4,900, Elijah Moore, 5K. I don't like any of the Chiefs. I think the receiving portfolio is too diversified with Juju getting looks and Xavier Worthy getting some looks. D-Hop, Justin Watson will get a target, and then you got Noah Gray and Kelsey. What do you like in this one?
Yeah, I agree with you that it's too diversified. I wish it wasn't, because Browns do give up some explosive plays, and Worthy and Hopkins could fit that bill, but I don't know that I will get there because of what you said, because it's so diversified. So it's the interest in the Jameis Winston stacks. Jeudy, maybe Tillman, if you feel confident in him coming back off the concussion. I'll throw out, are you guys have any interest in Akins if Njoku is out? And it's another gross cheap tight end.
So Mike, before you answer that, I'll give my answer. I think a lot of people want to play Stone Smart. This assumes Justin Herbert's fine, which it looks like he's going to be, but I like Stone Smart a little bit better if Will Dissly is out than Jordan Akins, but I don't hate the look. I mean, honestly, between Akins at his price and Juwan Johnson at his price at 3,400, I'd actually probably go with Juwan Johnson, but I'll also end up being on Stone Smart a lot too. Mike, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's interesting here. Stone Smart's definitely going to be the click for now. The guy that I like, who I think I want Njoku to be out because it's going to really, really help his ownership. I want to play Dalton Schultz a little bit who's in that passing attack. I think the Dolphins can push and make that game competitive. So we'll talk about that when we get there. But yes, I think Stone Smart's the guy for now. Tough to say if Njoku doesn't play, how heavy they go. I think the emergence of Jerry Jeudy is probably actually just going to funnel even more to Jeudy. Yeah,
maybe. Certainly Tillman might get a couple of extra looks as well if he plays. Well, Mike, you said when we get there. How about we get there right now? Dolphins are +3 at Houston. This is my favorite game of the week. So, Mike, I'm glad you mentioned Dalton Schultz, which is like, not completely on my radar, but at 3,300, great point. Like this, there's value here. Listen, when I say favorite game of the week, obviously I know there's games with higher totals. This is the game that I'm going to be taking the most chances on. And Mike, I love CJ Stroud at 6,200. I love Tua at 6,100. I think you can stack this either way. We'll get to my cheat sheet, but I'm just saying, unless you all change my mind, and I don't think this will be a popular stack, CJ Stroud to an expensive Nico Collins and running it back with, you got to take a chance here because we don't exactly know who's getting the looks. I think it's going to be Tyreek Hill. He had 14 targets last game, 9 targets the week before. He's been very efficient with his targets as well. That's going to be my favorite stack. CJ Stroud, Nico Collins, maybe a double stack, Mike, to your point, with Dalton Schultz. Run it back with Tyreek Hill. Obviously, Achane, Waddle, Johnny Smith, all in the conversation. Mike, how you playing this game?
Yeah, I'm going to play the game for sure. I like Miami to be able to push here, potentially even win this game. I love the idea that they get this in perfect conditions, right? So I think this is a great spot. I like Dalton Schultz a ton. Probably will play double tight end lineups. I mean, if you get into a situation where you play Stone Smart at 2,600 and Dalton Schultz at 3,300, you can essentially do whatever you want the rest of your lineup, and that's going to allow you to get a guy like Nico Collins and Tyreek in the same lineup if you want to. So I have interest on both sides. I'm still a little undecided, Sia, on which side I'm going to be stacking more as far as which quarterback I'll be looking to play more. My lean is actually towards the Tua side a little bit, only because of Joe Mixon. I think that Joe Mixon still takes enough away in the red zone, the way they use him, that I feel better about playing Tua, because I really think that Achane is still more likely to get the receiving touchdown in the red zone. So I lean towards the Tua side, and the biggest piece I'll have in this game is for sure Dalton Schultz.
Very, very interesting. We didn't even mention Tank Dell at 5,400 if he happens to get going against this Dolphins defense, Meg, that Aaron Rodgers just kind of like tore apart. I mean, let's be honest, the Jets should have won that game last week, and they weren't like the Dolphins defense wasn't stopping anybody. What do you like in this game?
Yeah, I think I'm a little more on the Dolphin side as well. Like the Tua stacks, however you want to stack it, because obviously there's so many ways you can stack it. I was very disappointed that I didn't get my guy Jonnu involved until overtime last week. But you can stack it obviously with either the receivers, Achane or Jonnu. So like that, and then I like one of the two Texan studs is my favorite. I like Mixon. I like Nico. It's just a matter of how I'm going to fit. I wouldn't play both of them together, but I would like one as a run back. And, if you're doing multiple lineups with it, you can run back some with Mixon and some with Nico.
Okay. Absolutely love it. Yeah. I think I'm going to have a lot of involvement in this game. And I'll note that this is a game where I'm also going to play just the early only slate. And I'm going to have a lot of involvement in this one. So just keep that in mind. Mike, go ahead.
Yeah. I just want to point out quickly, I've talked about it on all the shows, but about how Miami just not properly rated. Since Tua has returned, this offense is third in the NFL in EPA per play. Bills, Ravens, Dolphins, Eagles, Packers, Lions. That's the list right there. That's where they sit between there. If you look at the full body of work, they're going to rank around 20th. So just to show you how different that is, that's a huge, huge difference. The Texans in that same span rate just 24th in offensive EPA per play. So big signal on Dolphins offensively here.
Yeah, I'll say this about CJ Stroud. I haven't been a CJ Stroud guy all year. I do think there's some weaknesses in the Dolphins secondary in particular. I know they've got some studs there, but again, we saw what Aaron Rodgers did. I also just like the fact that Houston coming off a bye, maybe some of their issues, some of the lack of chemistry, particularly with guys like Tank Dell or Dalton Schultz, maybe that, gets fit. I don't want to say fixed, but maybe that improves a little bit. And again, that's a stack that I just don't think a lot of people are going to play. But I agree, Mike, with your sentiment. I don't think people really realize how good this Tua-led offense is. And he's just feeding everybody. It looks real good. It doesn't look good. Is anything New York Giants related? That's where we're headed next after this message from our partners.
CBS Sports HQ, giving you college football coverage unlike anyone else.
We're talking Big Ten.
Pre- and post-game coverage.
Are you encouraged with the way that this team responded?
Along with breaking news.
A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
Highlights and expert analysis.
That streak could be in jeopardy here.
Sure. What was your main takeaway from this game? How impressive was his domination?
That really changed the football game.
Let's go ahead and have some more fun.
Another wild ending.
The chaos continues.
Turn to CBS Sports HQ.
We're back on Fantasy Football Today, DFS. Thanks for watching. If you're watching us on YouTube, hit the like button, ask us a question or make a comment. And if you're watching us on Twitter, if you feel like it, jump into the YouTube channel. This is the Fantasy Football Today YouTube channel, of course. Jump in and ask away. Obviously, anybody who hits the like button or reviews the podcast, we always appreciate stuff like that. All right, Ravens at the Giants. I mean, I think conventional wisdom, Meg, says just lay off this game. Lamar Jackson's 8,300. How much does he have to push? Zay Flowers, though, 6,000. I mean, that's a great price. Derrick Henry, 8,300. I don't know that I want to get to anything in this game. It's a pretty low total as it is, 42.5. The other side, I'm not interested in Tracy or Malik Neighbors or, maybe Wan'Dale Robinson for some value. Maybe Darius Slayton, but it's pretty much a no for me. How about you, Meg?
Definitely nothing on the Giants side for me. On the Ravens side, Derrick Henry, the colder it gets, the hotter he gets. So, he is one of my other spend up options that I'm interested in, Mixon being one of the other ones that I'm interested in at the running back position. We talk about how many running backs we like. Derrick Henry is in that pool for me. Obviously, great matchup in a very obviously huge spread for the Ravens. So do like Henry and will be in my pool.
Yeah, Mike, the problem with me for this game, and I might be looking at this wrong, because to blow out a team, you have to build points to like actually get to the blowout part. So that could be Derrick Henry. I do think in the second half, if this goes really poorly for Tommy DeVito, and maybe it doesn't, but you might see Justice Hill. You might see, I think Keaton Mitchell is still healthy. You might see him as well. Are you in on anything in this game?
I am out. I will, if the big dog runs for 180-3, then that's great. I will not win a lot of money. I will still have an opportunity to min cash, which will be fine. But I think that this is a massive look ahead spot. And I think that they're going to be good enough to just get in, get out with a win. And we should see a lot of Justice Hill. We should see a lot of Keaton Mitchell, as long as he's active and healthy. Mm-hmm. The game next week is everything. They host the Pittsburgh Steelers next week on a shorter week. It's on a Saturday, not a Sunday. So just not like massive short week, but shorter week. Yeah, I'm out here.
Incentive to take some key players off the field when you've got a 17-point lead, right, Mike?
Certainly.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I mean, but listen, but we say it all the time. The guys like that are named Derrick Henry or Tyreek Hill or Justin Jefferson have the ability to put up 100+ and 2 touchdowns any given moment, any given game, any given opponent. So obviously, if you play Derrick Henry, I'm not going to criticize you. I'm off of that. All right, let's go to a game that I think we need to talk about the running backs more than anything. It's the Cowboys +3 at the Panthers. I can't believe this line has moved to +3. It's kind of funny. 43-point total, relatively low. Panthers implied total 23. I mean, it's not terrible. Chuba Hubbard 6,500. Mike, that's my favorite play in this game. Rico Dowdle at 6,100. That's a co-favorite, I guess. I'm out on literally everything else. Mike, any plays for this one?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely have to have some interest in those running backs, especially with Chuba Hubbard's potential volume. I mean, he touched the football 30 times in the last game. Rico as well. So I like both of them. I want to say I had a little interest in Adam Thielen as well. It's hopeful that the Cowboys will push here. I think that they would. It's kind of funny. We're in the situation talking about, can the Cowboys push the Panthers enough to keep them throwing the football? But that's where we are. We're talking 21 targets in the last 2 games. And we used to say not all targets were created equally, because this was at the beginning of the year, potentially a situation where like, okay, it's 21 targets, but 9 of them were catchable, right? Not the same story here. Bryce Young's looked phenomenal, frankly. So I think Thielen is just drastically underpriced if the game's tight.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know if Jalen Coker coming back complicates things at all, but Thielen clearly like the guy. Good for him, by the way. What is he, 34 years old now? He's clearly the guy for Bryce Young, helping Bryce Young's career out quite a bit, in my opinion. Meg, are you in on Hubbard and Rico Dowdle? Before you answer, I do want to mention, like, when we look at combo yards, rushing and receiving, I just want to let everybody know like where all the like big time running backs stand. Barkley's number 1. Tough matchup maybe against Pittsburgh. He's number 1 because he's Saquon Barkley. Kamara's next. I'm out on Kamara. Mixon is after that. He's 3rd. And I think we had a conversation about Mixon, how he might actually impact that game, a decent DFS play. Then we get Chase Brown. And at this point in the rushing and receiving territory, we're at the Chase Brown factor. We're at about 100 yards rushing and receiving. The next 2 down from that are Rico Dowdle and Chuba Hubbard. And just to round out the list, it goes Connor and Gibbs from there. That's like the top 8 rushing and receiving for this slate. With that said, it's hard to ignore both of these guys. You know, I think conventional wisdom says don't play both running backs in the same game. Do you like one guy more than the other?
Probably Chuba slightly, but I basically co-sign everything you and Mike have been saying. Love both running backs in this game. Absolutely. Both running backs are strong plays and in play for me. So love that. And I do like Mike's call out on Thielen. I mean, he is Bryce Young's guy, and I still agree that he's priced too cheap. So it's those 3 guys for me in this game. Pretty simple.
Okay. Let's move on, because I think we need to get to this big ticket game next. This is the first 4 o'clock game we're going to cover. It's the Bills +2.5 at the Lions. This is the talk of the week, right? Because it's a 54.5 point total, Mike. We don't usually see these types of totals. We just saw Josh Allen come off a Superman game, 3 passing touchdowns, 3 rushing touchdowns. We know the Detroit Lions defense gets just more banged up by the week, and frankly hasn't played a ton of good offenses until last week. Hasn't played a ton of good offenses, so we don't really know how weak this defense is right now. Receivers are healthy for Josh Allen. I don't know if that helps or hurts his argument from a stacking standpoint. Mike, how you playing this game?
You know, I'm going to have a little bit of Jahmyr Gibbs just because of the upside at 7,500 in all game scripts. I think Jamison Williams and Amari Cooper in an elevated game like this are also playable, but I'm honestly not getting a ton of this game to stack it just because price points are kind of prohibitive. And I like Miami and Houston, and I think it could be a very similar game in terms of scoring output. So I'm actually not super high on this game, but the pieces I do get would be Jamison Williams, Amari Cooper, Jahmyr Gibbs. You want to play Josh Allen, I think it's fine. Overall, though, I'm probably not stacking this game.
Meg, it's tough to build a Josh Allen lineup. I know because I tried just to hand build one, and you can. I mean, there's some value on the slate, but it's especially tough to build a Josh Allen lineup and get a lot of pieces in this game. And I do want to point out Amari Cooper he wasn't very efficient, but he got a ton of targets and a lot of yards last week. Khalil Shakir, kind of always a guy. I mean, Amari Cooper's 5,300, so he is potentially a stacking partner, but Keon Coleman is back. Mac Hollins gets targets. Curtis Samuel's back. He gets targets. Dalton Kincaid is back. This is a really tough one. I mean, I don't hate just playing Josh Allen solo and hoping he does what he did last week to some extent and running it back with like a Jahmyr Gibbs, for example. I guess what I'm really saying is I'm not exactly sure how to play this game. How are you playing it?
You nailed it for me. With all the guys coming back, it complicates things for me. I'm not going to try to predict which guy it is. And it's just so distributed, kind of like we talked about with the Chiefs. So if I'm playing Allen and he is in my pool and I do have interest, because we know obviously the massive upside, especially if this game does shoot out, I have interest in Allen. I'm not stacking him. That's just the way I'm handling the Buffalo side. From the Detroit side, I think Mike had a great call out about, I always love Jamison Williams because he's just so explosive and getting a lot more target share too than people, I think, of what we thought of Jamison Williams early in the season. He's getting a really solid target share, but it's the Detroit running backs for me. Montgomery, Gibbs, either one. You could play whatever one fits, honestly. Buffalo's bad against the run. They're fine giving up in the run. They're fine giving up to running backs out of the backfield. And we know both of these guys. We saw it in the Thursday night game. I actually made the prop bet of Montgomery and Gibbs' receiving yards. They both got there because they are both getting a solid amount of targets each game. And in this game, why wouldn't you target the running backs underneath? Because that's where Buffalo gives it up. So I like both running backs in this game. I did a shell lineup of a 4 p.m. only, how we talk about splitting it up. And I did Josh Allen and both the Detroit running backs. And I kind of made a fun lineup that I kind of liked.
That's interesting. Mike, let me ask you this. What about a Josh Allen lineup? We've kind of alluded to this, and you don't stack him with anybody, and you bring it back with maybe a Jahmyr Gibbs and let's say a pretty cost-efficient Jamison Williams at 5,600. Do you like playing it that way, or do I need to go more onslaught to really kind of get everything out of this game?
I would probably have a single stacking partner with Josh Allen.
Okay.
The doubles, I think, become a little less important because of the rushing. A build I'm looking at here on the screen that I think makes sense is Allen to Shakir with Jamison Williams on the other side, or Allen to Cooper with Jamison on the other side. But if I wanted to basically play naked, I would play with Jamison on the other side, which is someone who just got the massive quick strike ability that still allows Josh to still have a big like time of possession and really upside from his rushing.
Interesting. Yeah. Interesting game. I don't want to leave without talking about Sam Laporta. A lot of other value, but Sam Laporta, again, this portfolio on the Detroit side, there's a lot of targets, right? Mike, in or out on Sam Laporta?
I'll say out for now, but that's mostly because of the value at the position. The volume for me is just not high enough. And same answer for James Cook. I see it in the chat. I know it maybe is more of a season-long question, but James Cook is fine. The volume is not great with everyone back at 7K, and we've seen it. We saw it last week. If they fall behind, they're going to have to throw the football, and the ball is still just going to be in Allen's hands. So I think Cook has got a ton of upside. He could score 3 touchdowns. Wouldn't shock me at all, but I don't think the volume's high enough.
Yeah, and it could be Ty Johnson or Ray Davis. Meg, in or out on Sam Laporta?
Yeah, I'm out on both as well. Same answer.
Yeah. All right, let's move on. Listen, if you have questions about this game, obviously you can tweet at us. Sometimes you can find me. Actually, I'll be in the Sportsline Discord tonight at 8:30 in that sort of expert chat Discord answering questions if you want to ask me questions about that game. But we'll move on because we could spend a lot more time on that game, but we've got a show to do in about 45 to 50 minutes. Let's go Steelers, Eagles, 425. Meg, I don't have a ton of interest in this game. I mean, I know the AJ Brown squeaky wheel narrative is there, and I know Saquon Barkley is a baller, but on this slate, do I want to play either of them at 8,600 and 8K? The answer to that is no. On the other side, doesn't look like we're going to have George Pickens, so there's certainly some value at the receiver position, but then again, this is a pretty strong defense. I think Van Jefferson at 3,500 or Calvin Austin at 3,600 just to try to get lucky is an okay play because they'll probably have to throw the ball a little bit. What do you think of this game, in or out?
Basically what you said. I'm pretty much out on this game because Eagles side is so cost prohibitive. And then on the other side, there's cheap options, but which one is it? And then against this against this Eagles defense. So I think I'm pretty much out on this game, it feels weird, but it's hard to get to.
Well, it's only a 42.5 point total, and we've got a 12 game slate. So Mike, I mean, do you agree? Is this one where you're just going to kind of move on?
Yeah, I'm going to move on. Maybe a little Eagles defense, but mostly just moving on here.
Okay. Well, then we can move on from this game because we've got 3 more 4 o'clock games and then our cheat sheets. And then, of course, Mike's top 3 at each position. We're going to handle all that right after this message from our partners.
Welcome to JJ's.
I'll have wait, there's no way I can get a burger?
No chance. But you can have the NFL on CBS streams live on Paramount Plus. Oh, hang on. There's a toy.
All right, we're back on Fantasy Football Today, DFS. Let's go to the Colts and the Broncos. Colts +4, a 44-point total. Meg, this is another game where I'm just kind of out on. I'm not playing Jonathan Taylor at 6,900. I'm not playing Anthony Richardson at 5,800 on the road in Denver. To the extent we saw Jameis Winston take advantage of this Denver defense, which suddenly looked fraudulent in the moment, I don't expect Anthony Richardson to do the same. Again, Courtland Sutton looks like he's going to be pretty popular. I'm out on Courtland Sutton in this matchup. I kind of respect the Colts defense more than most. So that's a long way of me saying I want to move on to the next game. But do you like anything in this one?
It would really just be Sutton would be the only piece I would get to.
Sorry about
that. Sutton would be the only piece that I would get to, just because of basically everything you said. So just not a ton of interest in this game, though.
Fire alarm testing. Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to get to a lot in this game either. Look, Sutton's got some upside, but overall, I think I'm mostly out here. I'm out. I'm out on this one.
All right, guys. During this alarm, talk to me about Patriots Cardinals. Meg, go ahead.
Okay. Patriots Cardinals. I mean, you could make a case for Drake May, but there's too many other quarterback spots I like. I think the only thing of interest to me is James Conner. We kind of talked about it in the potential running backs. I think he was one of the ones you listed in the top 8 or 9 rush receiving yard props. So James Conner would probably be it for me in this game. And again, it's hard because I like so many running backs. So I don't even know if I'll actually get to him, but he is on my list here in the running backs pool.
Mike, anything on this one?
I think you could definitely play Kyler Murray, Trey McBride as a stack. I think you could play James Conner as well. I think it's a must-win game for the Arizona side and a decent matchup. I would guess that my computer situation is going to like Kyler quite a bit. I don't think he's going to get played as much as he should. Having said that, I'm not going to have him in my top 3. I'm probably not going to get there, but it's really difficult to ignore Trey McBride. I mean, the last 3 games, 14, 12, and 15 are the targets. It's just absolutely incredible, right? So Trey McBride's definitely in play here.
All right, let's move on to Buccaneers Chargers. I think this alarm's about to stop. Meg, go ahead. What do you like in this one?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I know we need to pay attention to injury reports in this one. I think, like, as you said, Herbert will be fine. So I do have interest in Herbert. I do have interest in McConkey if he plays. I think he should be a go. Hopefully he's a go because I do have interest there. So Herbert, McConkey, and then of course we've already talked about it, the cheap tight end, Stone Smart. So that's where I'm at the Chargers side again. And you want to attack the Bucs defense in the passing game. And right now, without Dobbins, that the Chargers don't have a good running game. So that's why I like Herbert, McConkey, Smart so much. And then on the other side, obviously White. If Bucky Irving is out, I like Rashad White. And then of course I still like Mike Evans. He's going for that 1,000 yards. The Bucs have everything to play for. So I have, interest in both White and Evans on the other side.
Yep. Same situation. I like Rashad White quite a bit as long as Bucky isn't playing. The volume's just going to be enough to be there. He's been very effective in both the run and the pass game. When given opportunity, I think he will here. Mike Evans, I'd like to see more target volume, but I think it'll happen. I like him as well. And then the big question mark is I just got to know on Ladd McConkey. If he's active, I'm playing him at 6,300. He literally, I think we've seen it in this offense. I think he's now an 8K receiver. Like, I think that's where he's at. I think the baseline for him, the rest of the way, when they're talking competitive games that they want to win, should be 10 targets, 90 yards. And whether or not you get the touchdown, we'll see. But that's what's going to happen for Ladd. So I like him a lot. I'll be playing him. And then, of course, cheap tight end, Stone Smart. Not going to stack the Bucs this week. Just going to be mostly Rachaad White.
Let me ask you, I want to go back to the other game real quick before we do the cheat sheets, because during that fire alarm test thing, did you guys address Marvin Harrison at 5,500? Because that is like a curiously low price. And Mike, you mentioned optimizers probably going to like Kyler Murray. Are we thinking about it's a 46-point total, 26 implied points for Arizona? So let me just go back to that one real quick. Mike, I'll start with you. Is it possible that optimizers like Kyler Murray because of the price of both Trey McBride and Marvin Harrison?
100%. Yeah, it's the combination of Kyler's price point. Trey McBride is still cheap. Like, honestly, for what you're getting out of him, he's only 6K. Like, you 12, 14, 14. Like, you're getting double-digit targets. Again, he's not like prime Travis Kelce. He's not as good as Brock Bowers in certain situations, but not far off, closer to an 8K player than a 6K player for sure. So yes, that's why the double stack with McBride and Harrison is just a little too cheap.
It's very interesting. If you're playing that 4 o'clock slate, that 5-game 4 o'clock slate, and you hit on a Kyler Murray stack or double stack, and that Bills Lions game becomes kind of choppy and, run game oriented, and some of the third tier targets get the touchdowns. I mean, that's how you win a tournament, right? I just think this is an interesting one. I mean, I wouldn't even be running it back with anybody on the Patriots side, but I mean, you could throw somebody in, but I'm certainly not doing that. Hunter Henry, 4,300, I suppose. But I think that game's really interesting. Everybody's out on Kyler Murray, and it makes sense, but they're at home, good field conditions, bad defense. They're still playing for the playoffs, so technically, I kind of get it. All right, let's go to our cheat sheets, Meg. And by the way, everybody, thank you for bearing with me during the air raid. Greg Hayes said air raid in the chat, but he wasn't even referring to my alarm. He was referring to something else, I think. Either way, funny comment. Meg, give me your cheat sheet. We do stack, chalk buy, chalk fade, contrarian, and value play.
Yeah, so my stack is going to be Herbert, McConkey, Smart, just because they have to lean on that passing game. And then my chalk buy is Chuba Hubbard. We talked about that. I just absolutely love him this week. Chalk fade, T. Higgins. I do think he, as Mike said, he's can have a bounce back game, but at his ownership, there's too many other receivers in that price range that I'd rather go to. Contrarian play, I'm seeing both Montgomery and Gibbs right now projected for fairly low ownership. If that's the case, I have interest in mixing them in both. On a full slate, I'd just play one. On the 4 o'clock, I might play both, but I have a ton of interest in Montgomery and Gibbs. That's how we attack the Bills. And of course, value Stone Smart, or if you want to go get creative and go Akins at a lower ownership, I don't mind that, but there are cheap tight ends that we can play this week.
Yeah, certainly monitor the injury reports as we get closer to Sunday. All right, my cheat sheet, my stack is, I love this Dolphins-Texans game. My stack is going to be CJ Stroud to Nico Collins. Collins really expensive. I just want to try to make that work because I don't think a lot of people are going to be playing that stack. I want to emphasize that's something I'm going to be just as prone, if not more prone to play on the early only slate with those 7 games, just an FYI there. Chalk buy is going to be, but I'll play it on the main slate too. My chalk buy is going to be Chuba Hubbard. We talked about him. Chalk fade, Cortland Sutton. Talked about that as well. My contrarian play, it's relatively contrarian because he has some ownership. So I'm cheating here a little bit. I'm cheating with the cheetah. Tyreek Hill at 7,400. I love him as a run back. I love him as a potential stack partner with Tua. And then my value play is going to be Stone Smart at 2,600. He's going to be super popular, but the matchup is good. If Will Dissly's out, we saw what he could do last week. I was actually quite impressed with Stone Smart. So 2,600 lets you do a lot with your lineup. Mike, top 3 at each position, and we start with quarterback.
I'm going to stack the game that you like a lot. It's going to be Tua and CJ Stroud, 1 and 2. Number 3, I was just quickly running through all the numbers there. It's actually going to be Patrick Mahomes for me. I've talked myself into the Browns pushing this team extremely well. So I think that this is a great spot to back Patrick Mahomes in that offense. So Tua, CJ Stroud and Patrick Mahomes. Next, I will move to the running back position. As of right now, it's going to be Rachaad White. I think Bucky's out, so I'm going to play him. He's just simply too cheap, and the volume should be there. Chuba Hubbard, Rico Dowdle. Yes, they're in the same game. I normally would care a lot. Don't care too much about it this week. So Rachaad White, Chuba Hubbard, Rico Dowdle. I got a big pup here. His name is Chief. We started talking about the Chiefs, so he came running. Jamar Chase going to be number one for me. It's just volume is absolute king. He's going for that triple crown. It's going to be there. Number two, we didn't talk about it. I had a little disservice because I ran new numbers during the show. I'm going to play DeAndre Hopkins. I'm going to pair him with Patrick Mahomes. I think the volume's going to be there. I think Kansas City, it's kind of a must-win game for them. They really do need to win this game still and go ahead and try and lock up that 1 seed, particularly the way they've been playing lately. It's a paramount that they get that home field advantage. And then Ladd McConkey. We talked about it a little bit with the volume. Love him here. Jamar Chase, DeAndre Hopkins, Ladd McConkey. And then tight end, number one for me, Dalton Schultz. Just too cheap. I'm playing both sides of the Miami Texans game, Miami and Houston Texans. And then Stone Smart, simply way too cheap. And then finally, Travis Kelce. A little homecoming, right? Mr. Cleveland himself headed back to the Cleveland Browns. They're going to need him in this matchup. I think they push. So give me Dalton Schultz, Stone Smart, Travis Kelce.
All right, before the sirens start again, I'm going to close the show. What a great show. We got our cheat sheets in. We got Mike's top 3, and we covered every single game. I'm waiting for the alarm. There it is. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been Fantasy Football Today. DFS. We'll see you next time.